This episode is supported by MonsterJoysticks.com. Level up your Raspberry Pi with our all-in-one arcade kit using genuine Sanwa arcade parts. And OneClickPrint.com for your photos on canvas, acrylic, gifts and more. Local craftsmen and global delivery.
Hello cave dwellers, welcome into the cave. The Mr. FPGA, it's still one of my favourite devices here, a year after reviewing it. If you haven't seen that review, there's a link in the description. It's probably the most convenient way to really enjoy systems without using software emulation, and it's a very difficult experience to explain, as I mentioned in the review, but a brilliant one. It's a travesty then that I haven't even put this in a case yet. I haven't 3D printed one, I haven't bought an acrylic one to drop it in. It's just still an exposed board and it deserves a lot better. So my goal today is to house this in a worthy case and to allow myself to really enjoy it as and when I want and get the full experience. And that includes using the wonderful feature which is the video output on this thing. So you can use an original monitor and get as close to the original experience as possible. And that's where this box comes in. Gateway 2000, or Gateway at this point, with its familiar cowhide box. And this gave me a real nostalgia hit the first time I saw it. I'm sure it does for a few of you as well. In here we have a Crt Monitor, new old stock. I hope it still works, but we'll find out. And it's in black. And that's because it matches my Checkmate 1500 case over here. Another item we've seen on the channel before, albeit in beige when I built the A500++, the brand new Amiga. Well, I've gone for another case in black this time, with a matching black keyboard and mouse, and I've just raided the store and chucked on the desk everything that I think might be needed to perform this conversion. The mist is going to go inside, and I want all of these ports, or as many as possible, accessible at the back of the machine, just like it's a real desktop computer. You're a real boy, Pinocchio. That's the goal today. Whether we'll achieve it or not, I don't know, but we're going to make a damn good go at it. It's going to involve some 3D printing, I'm sure. And I think at the end of it, I'd like something that I can just stream from as well. I can just have it in a corner, I can hit stream, and we can use the Mister to play pretty much any system that we want. Let's see if we can achieve that and get stuck in. Starting with the case then, which I'm repeatedly having to rub down because this black case really does show up the fingerprints when you get them on there. Now we're not going to be short of space, the size of this compared to the size of this. It's just a question of how we securely fit it inside. I won't talk too much about the case because there's a whole review on it on the channel, but let's open it up and let's figure out how that we can actually mount this. And you will recall there's a special way of opening this case. You take it to the edge of the desk, you slide it back. You have to bend it down to just get over the lip at the edge of the case. And then we have the inside of the case, which is filled with bits with which to mount an Amiga. I don't think we'll be needing those. I do have an LED board here, so hopefully we can hook that up to get the power and perhaps some kind of activity light working, but we'll come to that later. We've got the cables for our power switch. Again, something to figure out how to wire that up. And some screws that I've put in there for safekeeping. Now, here's our Mister. I told you we wouldn't be short of space. And I think the best idea is to try and mount this somewhere in the middle, allowing for cables, which we'll try and keep tidy, to come to the back of the case so we can access them to plug in. Now, there are 3 buttons on here, and it's quite useful to be able to get to these buttons to access file menus, to choose your ROM, to change your system and to do a reset. So we'll want to somehow extend those out, but that's about where I want it. Now there's no standoffs that I can just plonk it in, so let's go and design something quickly, some kind of base plate, so that we can securely get this in here, and let's 3D print it. And here's our 3D print. Now it's actually very rough around the edges. If you look at the bottom, that is a terrible quality print. And it's good enough for what we need today, but it has prompted me, this experience, to order a glass plate for my 3D printer. Because I've checked and triple checked and the bed itself is just slightly curved. People warned me that this might happen and it's causing all sorts of issues. So we'll get a nice flat glass plate on there. But this is fine for today. So we've got the mounting points, the screw holes, so we can line up with the standoffs. And then because there's nothing in this area to screw into, we've got those feet, which just stick out enough to make it nice and secure. So let's try and line this up. Yeah, they all line up just fine. 1, 2, 3, 4 screws there. We've got the mounts for the mister itself, and once that's in, that will be lovely. Good, I think we should screw that all into place and then we can think about our cable runs. That's in pretty securely. In fact, you can pick the whole case up. It's in there so securely. There's no movement whatsoever, so I'm pretty happy with that. And I will make the file available in case any of you should want to print this also. Okay, cable runs, I guess. And there's going to need to be an element of 3D printing, if nothing else, to blank off some of these unused holes at the back. But let's see what we need first. Video is simply a case of extending. I've got a male to female VGA adapter here, but obviously it needs to be somehow panel mounted at the back. So we've got the VGA cable. I've got a 3.5mm audio extension cable, which can be unscrewed and panel mounted. So if we 3D print a plate for that, so that goes there. HDMI cable, again, a panel mount extension, so I can screw that into something if we 3D print it. So that is our audio and our video. For power, I thought we could mount, again, into a 3D print, this DC jack, which we can screw in, we can mount, and then we can just solder some wires onto that through to the board to power it. Nice and simple. I have got a faceplate for the video cables. So I've got one here that takes the VGA and the HDMI. So that should just be a case of slotting it in and mounting them. That's nice and simple. The others I will have to design a 3D print for. And then there's USB. So this is a StarTech USB adapter. It's the type that you would normally plug straight into a motherboard. And it gives you 4 USB ports on the back of your PC, all nicely ready to go straight in. But we've got no way of plugging that into the mister. To achieve that, first of all, to get USB out of the mister, this port here is a serial I/O port. Even though it looks like a USB port, it's not. To get USB out, you need to use the micro USB adapter, which is the ports down here. There we go, and that's just a regular USB hub. So that breaks out our regular USB ports, I guess. And then to get from them to there, I've bought these USB internal extension cables with a Type A to male header, apparently. Let's rip this open. Now, each USB cable needs just the 4 pins. So I'm hoping if I then break out of the USB hub, we're going to need some good cable management in here. And then put those pins into here, making sure it's the right way round. Do that 4 times, and we should have all 4 USB ports hooked up. That's the theory. Might even need some hot glue in here. So that's the theory for the USB ports. Is that everything? The other thing was buttons for these, but we'll come back to that. I just want to see if I do actually need access to them or if I can work around it using software options. But we've got them if we need to try them. So let's get this hooked up and let's see if this works. It looks like an absolute mess at the moment. First problem then, there's not enough clearance to get both the HDMI and the VGA next to each other. So I'll have to trim a bit off of the end there to actually make that fit. And then I'm thinking some hot glue probably. Let's get the hacksaw. Right, that's not moving anywhere. It's in a cocoon of hot snot. Perfect. So we should be able to mount that in there, and I'm going to do that right now. Let's get a screw. And that is just the right length for our HDMI. It's in. And our VGA. Perfect. We're off to a good start. What else needs some hot snot? Let's do the USB cables next. 4 USB cables then in our hub. If you've got a better way of doing this, please let me know. For the sanity of anyone involved. And then our female and male USB cables are actually color coded, so I'm just lining up red cable to red cable. There's one. It's actually quite a snug fit, so there's no risk of those popping out. Some cable ties to come later. Audio next, I think. So that is our audio jack, 3.5mm audio jack. And this is just long enough to go somewhere here. That seems like a nice candidate. That is originally the keyboard connector there. But that's quite a nice candidate if I 3D print something there. I think I need to consider the thing as a whole, taking into account also the power jack. But I have just noticed this hole here might actually be the right size. It is. I think it is. Can I screw that in? It is, you know. I'll need to take it back out to solder it up, but our DC jack slots straight into that hole perfectly. It's as if it was meant to be. So that needs to be wired up and soldered, but we've got a hole for our DC jack. Perfect. All that remains is the audio. So I think I am going to put it here. I'm just going to come up with some kind of 3D print design to just be a rectangle, just a rectangle with the correct size aperture to screw this into. Let's go and design that now. Nearly ready now to break out that gateway monitor and give this its first test. First of all, we just need to get the power into it. We're going to solder from the DC jack into the underside of the DE10 board here. 5-volt power supply, nice and simple, so let's get that done. Here's our DC jack. Bottom one, you can clearly see the ground plane, that's ground we're going to tap into. Top one here is when the 5 volts goes into. A great big blobs of solder, that should sort them out. pretty, but it will work perfectly well. Excellent. I'm looking forward to testing this now. Just one last thing before we do that. I'm just going to ground the board itself to the case. The moment of truth. Let's see what happens when we plug it in. There's no power switch as such. As soon as you plug it in, it should just spin up. So let's see what happens. Cross your fingers. Looking good. I know we're not finished yet, but I'm itching to see this thing all set up with the monitor on top. So let's test out the USB ports, the video ports, and see what it looks like. Now I have absolutely no idea if this works, even the seller doesn't. It's been in the box since the day it was manufactured. So cross everything that we've got a working monitor in here. Cross everything that we've got a monitor in here for. In fact, it could just be a box full of bricks. But it certainly feels like the correct weight for an old school CRT. Okay, we're good. There is a monitor. So this is the Gateway. Oh, smell the old electronic smell. Gateway VX760/VX765 monitor, according to the guide. We've got a stand and it is in black, which is exactly what we wanted. It's such an odd feeling unboxing a monitor, a CRT monitor. It is of course brand new. It's just so strange to see in such good condition. There is a date on the back, December 2006. So it's about 14 years old. Lovely, lovely, perfectly flat screen there. It looks the part. But does it work? I really hope it does. Here goes nothing. The monitor's going in. It's making monitor-like noises. Seems good. Let's plug the Mister in. That looks amazing. Let's see if our keyboard works. Yes, it does. So I tested out a few of my favourite systems to see how this went, and it's absolutely fantastic. The monitor's great, the USB ports are working just fine, the audio's great. I plugged in some headphones. I haven't even had to hot glue that headphone, that 3D printed port for the headphone in. It's just in there so solid of its own accord that that wasn't needed, so that's great. And if you've watched my review of the Mister, you already know I'm a huge fan of it. But this whole build, it's just elevating it. It's just so tantalizing to have this on a desk. It's a weird paradox. It's a brand new thing that we've built. We've packaged the Mister in the new Checkmate case. And you're playing old systems on there. It's like the system from back in the day that you always wanted, but you could never have, but it never actually existed. I've got this weird memory from some old TV show. I don't know if it was a memory or if it was just some weird daydream that I had, but I'm sure I watched a TV show way back in the 90s where somebody came out on the desk with this system that could play all of the consoles of the day. It was probably just all of the consoles of the day crammed into a box, but they pulled out this hybrid and said it was going to be the future, and of course we never heard from it ever again. Well, emulation has made that possible, and the Mister as well through FPGA. But to actually have it in a box like this, set up permanently at a desk, it almost feels like that thing has finally been realised. It's a hard thing to explain. I really like it. I hope you do too, but we've still got loads more to do with it. I'm still establishing whether or not I need access to those 3 buttons because I can't think of the last time I actually had to press them. But we have got those buttons. So we'll think about in part 2 of putting them at the back if we need to after a bit more play testing. We absolutely have to get the power and the activity light going. We need that feedback for the systems that we'll be using. And the on-off switch. We need to get that on-off switch working. Yes, I can just pull the power out or turn it off at the plug. Yes, I can do a hard reset through the menus just by pressing F12 and choosing the hard reset option. But it's not the same. And Stephen Jones, who made this case, he went to great length to make that switch feel like the original Amiga 3000 switch. So we must do Stephen justice by making sure we use that switch. And then at the rear, we need to block off all of the panels we're not using. You know, the gap for the PSU here is so big, I'm almost tempted to make a mouse garage that you can slot the mouse into at the back. Yeah, there's many options. And of course we need to name it, and of course we need a case badge to finish it off. But I'm not going to tell you what I've named this yet. I have come up with a name, but I'm going to keep you in suspense until I've actually got that badge ready to stick on there. So I hope you will join me in part 2 as we continue this journey of creating something that is rapidly becoming rather special, and I'm absolutely loving it, if you hadn't already guessed. See you next time. Thank you for watching, and take care, everyone.